Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
So we are this morning. I know I've laid a lot of stuff on y'all recently, so you've been amazingly patient and present and accommodating. We've gone down a lot of rabbit holes, and you've been incredibly wonderful to hang in there. So today it's just going to be a little bit lighter, hopefully still lovely, because for me it was like, oh, I never put all of this together this way before, which is always fun. But it's a little lighter, a little easier today. So we're just going to take a tour through this week's Parsha, which is the longest Parsha in the Torah, Parshat Naso. So we're going to, it's like 176 verses. And like why it's chopped where it's chopped, nobody's really sure. It kind of starts in a weird place. But people, of course, are great at giving meaning to the structure of the Torah portion and why it is so. And even though it wasn't Jewish, the divisions really, it's that we somehow as Jews find meaning in the way it winds up being divided. So we have that this morning too about that. So let's say a bracha and get started with Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, Spirit of the universe, who makes us holy with your mitzvot, one of which is to negotiate for better working conditions for people, and the other is to engage with words of Torah. So we're going to do the latter. So let's go to the text. So before we jump into the text, I want to situate us. Last week, before Shavuot, we had, of course, the counting that used this word pakad, pei kuf dalid, that shoresh. And this week is Naso, the first word of the Torah portion, which is count. But we're getting a different word for count. And we saw it before Shavuot with Se'u et Rosh Kol Adat B'nai Israel, lift up the head of every member of the people Israel. So that's other language for counting, and that's the language we're going to see the beginning of our Torah portion, and we're going to see this word come up over and over, and so we're going to look at how that verb is used in this parsha and the meaning that some of the commentators derive from the fact that that word is all over this week's parsha in different contexts. So we've come through a counting, and then we have Shavuot. So always we read and then about accounting, and then we have Shavuot, and now we have Naso. So the giving of Torah is bookended by two parshiot about counting, and about counting the people, and then about some laws that we're going to see splunked in the middle of this parsha before we come back to the closing bookend of the parsha. So the parshiot bookend the giving of Torah in the middle, and in our parsha, there's counting, there's big stuff that happens on either end, the beginning and the end of the parsha, and then this stuff in the middle that it's like, what's that doing there exactly? So we're going to look at both the macro and the micro about this book endings. Okay, here we go. Let's start with the text. All right, so we're at Numbers 4, and we are getting the very beginning of our parsha, which is why, of course, it's called Naso, because here we go, Naso. All right, so something new and different. Vayidaber Adonai Moshe, God speaks to Moshe and Aharon saying, Nasoet Rosh Kol B'nei Kehat. So it's not everybody who's being counted. We're getting different countings for different reasons. Right now we're getting countings that are for the clans that will be doing certain sacred work when breaking down the Mishkan for porterage and what their role is. So right now we're starting this parsha with counting and the word Naso at Rosh, so like this verb that we're going to spend a lot of time on, which means lots of different things, but in this case probably means something close to lift up the head of the members of the clan of Kehat from amongst the members of the tribe of Levi, according to their families, according to their ancestral homes, right? So their ancestral groupings. From 30 years and up to 50 to AARP age. Why? Because that's who's qualified to do the porterage. And everyone who everyone who's going to come out to the work of doing the service of the tent of meeting. This is the task of Bnei Kehat with the Ohel Moed, Kodesh Kedoshim. So they're going to be responsible for the most sacred objects. Uva Aaron uvanav bin soa machaneh, and when Aaron and his sons come, when the camp starts to move, they are to take down the curtain of the screen and are to cover with it the coffer of the testimony. So their job is to cover the sancta so that it can be carried and transported. So it can't be seen, it can't be handled, except by Aaron and his sons. They come and they pack up the stuff so that it can be carried by Kehat. Okay. So we're going to skip, this is a really long parsha. We're going to go through here to one of our next occurrences. Oh, sorry. I started the wrong place. Look at me. All right. I tell our B'nai Mitzvah, don't worry about making a mistake. I do it all the time. All right. Actually, this is where Naso starts. All right. So Naso at Rosh B'nai Gershon. So we just had Kehat. This is Gershon. So it's the same exact wording, the same exact thing, except this is now Gershon, and what they're going to do, same age groupings. You can see how one could get confused. And this is what they're going to do. And they're here. So now we got this business with Kehat. We get it here with Gershon, this business of Naso, this language for counting that's about lifting up. And what is the work that Gershon's going to do exactly? V'nasu et yiriot hamishkan ve'et ohel moed. They are going to carry the curtains of the Mishkan and of the tent of meeting. So we've got the sense of Naso, Nun, Sam, Sin, Aleph, these three letters here. We've got it as counting, right here. We've got it as counting, Nun, Sin, Aleph. And here we have it as what the work they're going to do is. So lift up their heads, lift up their faces, lift them up in order that they shall carry. So essentially, like looking at some of the commentary this week, I was struck by lift them up so that they can be weighed down, right? And it's the same word. So when you carry something, it's a burden, literally, right? It's on your shoulders. It's literally on their shoulders. It's weighing them down. Lift them up that they might be weighted down with this stuff. Very interesting that it's the same shoresh. So then we get more details about their work, and this work is carrying from the same. Okay. So you can see we're going through. Now it's using the language of Pikod, right? Pikudei. So this is the other language for counting, the Pei Kuf Dalet language. So now we get these laws in here in chapter 5 about anyone who's got sara'at, anyone who has had a nightly omission, and anyone who has been made impure by a dead person, they are to be sent out of the camp until, right, they are able to come back in. Who else? Anyone who does a sin and then realizes that they're guilty. They also have to be dealt with, right? They have to confess what they've done, and they have to make restitution, adding 20% to it. And we go on for the offering that they have to make. And now we get one about the Isha Sota, the woman accused of adultery. Nowhere here does it say she's to be put to death, which is fascinating because other places it does. That's what they're concerned with. It's a capital crime. But it's not involved here. It's listed with these other folks who have an issue. See what I did there? Issue. So we have to decide what is going on here. What do these have anything in common? Because here we go, right, about an emission of seed. So we now have, so that's the accusation, and he's jealous. So now there's this ritual that has to go on, that dirt is taken from the floor of the Mishkan and put into water, and she has to drink it. And it's called the water of bitterness. And if she is guilty of adultery, her thigh will sag, right? It'll cause the belly to swell and the thigh to fall, perhaps mimicking pregnancy. Don't know. What we know is this is the use of licit magic by the priest. But that's what the trial is about her drinking this stuff. Supposedly something's going to happen to her bad if she's guilty. But if it doesn't, then she is cleared, essentially. And here's like what she has to do to be able to come back into. Now, we get the laws of the Nazarite. Why is that here, right? Someone who sets himself apart. A Nazarite is like Samson, someone who swears off alcohol, stops cutting the hair. Also with the Isha Sota, the adulteress, the one accused of adultery, the priest takes down her hair. Interesting that same with the Nazir. They don't cut their hair. So there seems to be something about this idea of long, loose hair and, a state of being set apart for some reason. So the Nazir takes that vow voluntarily and becomes consecrated in a special way to God. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden. So, and then after they are done being a Nazir, then they have to bring a sin offering. So this seems to suggest that this is not a great thing and that we should not look to do this, that it's something that they do. But they have to bring a chatat offering when they're done being a Nazir. So this seems to suggest it's not normative. It's not something we want everyone to do. Okay. So that's the stuff that's in the middle of our parsha, these 4 categories of people who are set aside. And now we come to the other dramatic thing towards the end of the parsha. And that is Vayidaber Adonai Moshe Lemor. God speaks to Moshe saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, Lemor, saying, Ko tivarchu b'nei Israel. Thus shall you bless the people Israel. Amor lahem. You will say to them. And here we go with the famous priestly benediction. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God do something about blessing vis-a-vis y'all and shamoring, right? Protecting, guarding, keeping. May God's face be caused to light up towards you, and may God show you chen, grace. Here now is this word again. Here's this verb again that we've been talking about. Yisa Adonai panav elecha vayasem lecha shalom. May God's face be lifted up, elecha, towards you, and may God place upon you shalom, peace. V'samu et shmi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarchem. To be very, very clear, people. To be very clear. And you will place, so what we're asking that God place on us wholeness. And in doing so, in saying these words, the priest places the name of God on the people Israel. And I, says God, avarchem, will bless them. This is not the priests blessing the people. So anytime you hear people say that, feel free to correct them. The priests are not blessing the people. It is very clear, according to Torah, God is blessing the people. The priests are the ones who are supposed to say these words over the people, and in doing so, place God's name on the people. And in doing so, God blesses the people. Okay? All right. So notice this business, Yisa, it lift up, but it's also, remember the 13 attributes of God that we chant at the High Holy Days? No se avon vafesha, God who lifts sin and wrongdoing. It's the same word again. Lift up the face. May God's face be lifted up toward you. Lift up the Gershonites and the people of Kehat so that they can use this verb to carry. So it's interesting. It means both to carry, like to be laden with this burden, and to lift up and to lift off sin is used about God in the 13 attributes that are also from Torah. It's not rabbinic. It's from Torah. So this word is used for being laden down with a burden, being lifted up to do that, but it's the same language for God lifting off of us sin. And what does that connote? Does that connote God carrying it? Or is it just that it comes off us? But we know this verb has something to do with carry. So it's a very interesting, which I never really put together before, a very interesting set of meanings that come with this sacred obligation and then with the way that people are blessed, right? Then at the very end of the Parsha, what do we get? The very end of the Parsha, And who's supposed to come close? Nisi'e Yisrael. Here it is again, people. Nun, sin, aleph. The same shoresh, the same root. I don't think I ever put that together. Who are they? Nisi'e hamatot. They are the leaders of the tribes. A nasi is a leader, a prince, if you want to use that language. How does that tie into this verb? So someone who is lifted up, right? So they are in an exalted position. Someone who has been lifted is a nasi. So it's different vocalization, but it's the same shoresh, the same 3-letter root of nun, sin, aleph. Okay? So now we're getting all the gifts that the nisi'im are bringing forward at the end of the parsha, because we're going to have the Chanukat HaMizbeach. We're going to have the dedication of the altar, right? So they are to come close. Vayakrivu, right? And you shall bring close the Nisi'im, the lifted up ones, the princes of the tribes. They bring their gifts, and we get the dedication of the Mishkan. And you remember we studied one year about the dramatic dedication. Look how long this parsha is. We got the whole thing about the nervousness about would it work, would it happen? They set it up. Was God's presence going to fill it? There's all this anxiety about it. There are some that say that's how Nadav and Avihu died, because the fire went forth and consumed them, because they were in the way, because they were where they shouldn't be. Okay. So it ends with when Moshe would come to the Ohel Moed, right? He would hear et kol, the voice speaking to him from on the kaporet, the covering of the aron, that's on the aron, from between the two kruvim, and it would speak to him. What would speak to him? The kol, the voice. The voice of what? The voice of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Would speak to Aharon from between the kruvim on top of the... Okay, ta-da. Any initial thoughts as to what I just said in terms of carrying, porterage, roll, counting, lifting up, being a prince? Any of these things, any relationship come to mind for right away? Yeah, Betsy.
I just had a question about the use of that verb. So why is that not, if you will, carried through to contemporary Hebrew? Like we don't say, like lehakim is to raise, right? And like why is it not really used for in the same way in modern Hebrew?
So it's first of all, always difficult linguistically to answer a why question. You can sometimes answer a how question. Like, how did that word come to be associated with, like sometimes you can make it jump because it's etymology. Like you can get from the etymology of the word to how that might have developed into blah, 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 blah. It's very hard to ask, why did the contraction y'all take off and others didn't? Why did the word cool stop being cool? Right? So language evolves very, very quickly. And we know language evolves very quickly. So, the reason Hebrew did not, the reason we still have a lot of relationship between modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew is because there was a 2,000-year break where it wasn't spoken. It was only a written language. It's the only ancient language, P.S., to be resurrected, to have died and to have been resurrected. The only case we have in human history of an ancient language dying as a spoken language and being resurrected. So that means it slowed the progression. Not that it's stopped, because Rabbinic Hebrew is different than medieval Hebrew, which is different from Hasidic Hebrew. There continues to be an evolution, but the rapidity of it was slowed. There is some nun, sin, aleph stuff in modern Hebrew.
Isn't to travel, linsoa is to travel.
Yeah, but that's samech.
Is that with an ayin or aleph?
That's samech ayin.
Ayin, okay.
It's not sin aleph, it's samech ayin.
Ayin.
But also linsoa ha'aron, right? When the ark would go forward, right? So that's biblical Hebrew. Linsoa, to travel, is biblical for to go, right? To move.
To move, yeah.
Yeah. So we do have cases of carrying, things, those kinds of verb to lift off of. We do have modern Hebrew that has the nun, sin, aleph connotation. And raise up is another one. It's also biblical. Laharim, right?
Laharim is in the Torah?
Laharim is in the Torah. Okay. So sorry, that was a little bit of a linguistic
Thank you.
sidebar. Okay. Anybody want to say anything before we go on?
Just a comment that I thought of as you were talking about who was going to do what, that had that not been the case, that there would have been chaos. And that part of this is structuring the religious life of the Jews with some kind of structure as to who was going to carry what and how it was going to be done, other than you could end up with nobody doing it, or you could end up with everybody fighting over who was going to do it.
Right.
So I think there's a practical sense of why it says this family will do that and that family will do that, and always a sense of structure and order, which many of us moderns reject because we don't want to be in a box. But the flip side of that is there is some advantage to something like that, so that society, people can live within a structure.
Right. Thank you. And remember, it's a military structure too, right? Like they need a military formation because they are traveling vulnerable, like with lots of stuff and toddlers and, whatever. So, and animals and whatever. So it's necessary for safety to be organized as a military campaign, as well as it just needs to be organized because you have that many people that you're trying to break down and set up and blah, blah, blah. Everybody needs to know where they're going. Everybody has their job. And that, like you said, is seen as a positive in this case. And it's an honor because this word of lifting up is being used. Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, so thank you. I feel like I'm pointing to something so obvious here, but yeah, that in order to be burdened by what I carry, I must first lift it. And in so doing, I am lifting myself toward the divine so that because I'm lifting up sacred objects and carrying a sacred burden, in so doing that I become exalted. So it makes perfect sense to me how these words would be related. As for the prepositions, lift up, lift off, I don't know enough about Hebrew, but is this because we're English speakers and so we're making a distinction here that doesn't exist in Hebrew, that these are prepositions that we think of them as different, but these prepositional relationships are not there? So that's because I know in so many other languages, those relationships are, under and over and, that those just are so different.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
So the way I know the correct use of prepositions in Hebrew is because I remember what my Israeli friends say when they get it wrong in English, right? When they say,
right. We know this when we learn another language.
I was talking to them in the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, so that means the way you say the preposition you use in Hebrew is in the phone.
Yeah. Even in English, UK, British versus American,
That's right.
I go to hospital, I go to the hospital with definite articles.
My Israeli friends say, close the lights.
Right.
I'm like, oh, so the preposition in Hebrew is not turn off. It's close the lights, right? Prepositions are.
That's what I mean, right? That's what I mean.
It's a very subtle. If you get the prepositions right, it means you are fluent in a language.
Right.
Essentially, right? Because you're not translating your own language prepositions into their language.
Yeah.
So, right.
So is that a difference that maybe doesn't mean anything?
Right. So in English, the language of breadth and accuracy and nuance, we get a lot of preposition.
Right.
Lift off, place on their shoulders. A lot of prepositional language.
Okay.
Missing from the Hebrew.
Now that makes sense.
So your instinct is right. That there isn't a bunch of, if you just use a different preposition, a different preposition, then that's what changes the meaning. Lift off, put on. In Hebrew, it's nun, sin, aleph.
No need for the preposition.
Both to carry and to lift. Yeah. There's no on or off.
Yep. Okay. That's
perfect. So for me, that's the difference with Hebrew and English, and also other Romance languages like French, is that the prepositions are different. They're not as many, and it means what's built into Hebrew is this depth of and richness and layered, textured meaning just from using those three letters together. Right. My favorite one that I use all the time is Shema. It means both to listen and to hear. There's no distinction in Hebrew. So translating Shema, do you say listen, Israel? or Hear, O Israel. Well, you have to pick one to render on the page in English. In Hebrew, it means both. So so Hebrew has this beauty of all of this built-in richness and resonance down that English lacks. The beauty of English is its nuance and its breadth and its ability to get a very specific kind of emotion or color and this is the difference with Hebrew. So let's look at some of the richness of what our people have done with this very odd, not odd, because for Rachel it makes total sense, but this kind of almost self-contradictory set of meanings around Nun, Sin, Aleph. So you know what I'm going to bring you now. So you know me. Right? But actually, let's start with the other thing. Then we'll go to this. Let's start here. Okay. So this interesting article by Yitzhak Ginsburg, who outlines the whole Parsha and says there's actually really important meaning in the way that this Parsha is structured. Oh, look at that. I put y'all on my second. I love that. Was not good.
Do you want to know where to invest it?
Oh, that's not okay. So I got a little too clever for my britches, and now I've lost where I was. See, you try to be Bert Kleinman, and it fails every time. Okay. Hopefully sometime today. Okay. See it? All right. So Naso, meaning number one, to raise. That's what we get in the very beginning of this Parsha, he points out, right? So raise the heads of the descendants of Gershon based on their households and their families. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. But he suggests, like the use of it in the 13 attributes, he suggests, which is according to rabbinic tradition, that this business of God lifting God's face is about forgiveness. That it's a euphemism, it's an idiomatic expression for forgiveness. So rabbinically, lifting of God's face towards you means it is God forgiving you. And this is how this verb is used, like we said in the 13 attributes, God who lifts sin. Because when you're so disappointed in somebody, you can't even look at them. So one of the only times I got so angry at Eliana and she was 18, it was her 18th birthday, I'll never forget it, so angry that I thought I might actually say something that I would regret for the rest of my life. I said to her, get upstairs, get away from me. I cannot look at you right now. I cannot look at you, right? Meaning I'm protecting you by not looking at you because I'm so angry, right? And so it's this weird loving protection, but it comes out of extreme disappointment with what someone's done. That seems to be rabbinically what the rabbis believe this language is about in Torah, about God and the people and humanity, is that God protects us from what the consequences of our behavior should be, because God loves us and so doesn't look at us until God forgives us. When God looks at us, God is forgiving. Okay. You can buy that or not, but it's definitely there in the 13 attributes. So this same idea of lifting. Now, I did not know this, but the prayer over the people, the blessing of the people, is called Nisiat Kapayim. Same verb, the lifting up of the hands. Because the priests, remember, have to lift their hands, put them in that Vulcan posture that Margot's doing, and bless. And then the people are blessed. And so this is Nisiat Kapayim. The lifting, that blessing is known, that procedure is known as the lifting up of the hands. So here's this word again, this beautiful, beautiful tapestry that we're getting in this Parsha about this word. And then he says it culminates, right, in the climactic third blessing. May God lift God's countenance, also from this word naso, representing forgiveness, because we can't bear to look at someone directly when we've been seriously disappointed by them. So our transgressions are forgiven. And how does that happen? That happens because God is Nose Avon. God lifts it and carries it. In this manner, God takes responsibility, as it were, for our evil. Whoa. Think about that for a sec. Whoa. What does it mean when we say God is Nose Avon Bafesha? God, the one who lifts and therefore carries sin. Like, whoa. If you really think about that, God is carrying our avon. Okay, I just sit with that for a minute. And then we get the final meaning of it, of course, is prince, right? Those who will be exalted, and he points out that language is also used of Messiah, of Mashiach, the servant that will be exalted and rise, right? So again, this language of lifting and rising and being lifted up, because they have a special role, the Mashiach. All right, so he goes on to talk about the fact that this is paradoxical, right? And that our normal way of thinking is pretty straightforward, and that it takes a certain amount of maturity of thought to be able to hold the paradox of both being raised and elevated with this word, and also to have it be a burden and be something that weighs us down and has us be dignified in a certain way by being lifted up for a certain role. Okay, so that takes a certain maturity, and that this parsha is demonstrating the, as he calls it, the flow of paradox. Okay, I wasn't so convinced by the paradox argument. You can look at the article yourself. I put the link in the source sheet. So let's go to the actual definition. And this is my favorite dictionary. You can get it through Sefaria. My copy burned. But this is my favorite, one of my favorite dictionaries. My Chavruta partner turned me on to it. She sent it to me actually as a gift. It's Klein, and it's the etymology of the Hebrew language. And so Klein actually looks at the development of a shoresh, of a root. Doesn't just give you the background, but discusses the development of it. But here we're just getting the actual use of nun, sin, aleph, naso. Okay, so here we go. Here it is, nun, sin, aleph. So that's the entry in the Klein dictionary. If we look at it, to lift, to carry, to take. First person masculine singular. He lifted or raised. He bore or carried. He took away, carried off. So in that sense, it is paradoxical, isn't it? Because you take something, but what does it mean to take it away? It's very interesting. Anyway. Now, what else does it mean? So any of you who know about the blessings under the chuppah, the first cup that we say a bracha over is the cup of erusin, betrothal. The second cup is the cup of nisuin, marriage. Nun, sin, aleph means married. It's the verb for to marry. Okay, contained, but also swept away or destroyed. From the rabbinic understanding, forgave or pardoned, lifted up, raised, exalted, was respected, was married. Nisa, lifted up, raised, caused to bear. So this is the he field form with the hey in front. His'i, hit naaseh, right? He lifted himself up. He caused himself to be lifted. The heat pe'el form, the reflexive. Here's the causative, right? So this is typical Hebrew. You add these elements and you change how the verb behaves, right? Was given away in marriage, meaning was caused to be married. All right. And here's all the ways I had not put it together that it was ha-mit naseh lechayot hakodesh. Mit naseh I had not gotten was from this shoresh. All right. So it's everywhere. Okay. So you see the extensive way that this verb form works. All right. Well, let's get some thoughts. Dr. Rafa El-Zaru, the head of the London School of Jewish Studies, in the Sidra called Naso, the heads of the Levites are raised in order to count them. So Naso at Rosh, right? In order Su'u, that they can be counted. And their job was laseit, to carry, the same shoresh, the portable tabernacle in the wilderness. Translating Nosei Avon from the 13 attributes as carry iniquity transforms the entire meaning of the prayer. Instead of a list, meaning of God's attributes, it becomes a request. I would paraphrase it like this. God, O Lord, who is merciful, gracious, slow to anger, right? The beginning of the 13 attributes. Please carry our iniquity, sin, and error. We are asking God to carry our mistakes on our behalf. The weight of a person's sins are hard to bear. We tend to hide our mistakes, even from ourselves, and try not to think about them. Facing up to them is painful and shameful, and most of us are not ready. So for a while, we ask God to literally take the weight off our shoulders. This reading of Nosei Avon reminds me of that famous poem, Footprints, about a dreamer who sees two sets of footprints all along the sandy pathway of their life, one belonging to me and the other to God. Looking back, the dreamer asks God why there's only one set of footprints during the most difficult, lowest, and saddest times in their life. God replies, "It was then that I carried you." There is a concept in psychology called emotional containment. For example, a parent offers their child the experience not only of having their distress relieved, but more importantly, of being understood. The parent contains or carries the worries and fears expressed by the child in order to help them come to terms with their feelings and gradually face up to them. When containment is deprived, emotional growth can be distorted. As adults, we learn to contain ourselves. God then is our parent who contains the distress we express over our mistakes. In this way, God allows us the space to move on and learn to stand up to our inner fears. It can take years before we're ready to know Se'avon. In truth, our sins can never really be wiped out, but we can change our attitude towards them. Over time, we can learn to carry them for ourselves, face up to the effect they have had on our lives, and learn. What? I don't know about y'all, but this Yom Kippur, I'm going to be praying the 13 attributes a little differently, right? Does it mean to see God as a loving force of protection and wanting growth for us and development for us and love for us? And in that says, I'll carry it. I'll carry your mess ups because I love you and I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help hold this till you can, till you're able really to own it and feel that you have the strength to change. Because that's the only time we're ready to really face it, isn't it? Is when we're ready to not do it again. Otherwise, we're just kind of caught in this morass. But all the work on shame that's being done, Brené Brown, like all that stuff, you know, the courageousness of vulnerability. But we have to be ready to change and do it differently. That's when we can carry our own stuff. Is when we're ready to live with, okay, what does it mean for me to contain it and carry it and own it so that I can face it and it won't flip me out and I don't hate myself. I can figure out a way to hold it, literally, to carry it, to hold it. I just think that's a beautiful insight into this idea of carrying, both God carrying, us carrying, containing, all that stuff. Bert?
I don't know. Is that a cop-out?
Huh.
Saying God's going to do it for me. I just, the line between that doesn't sit all that well with me because I'm big on personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I can see saying, give me some help, walk beside me, lighten the load a bit, but not comfortable with saying, okay, you do it, and someday maybe I'll be able to. But that's just me.
Yeah. No, so I get it. And so we all don't have to resonate equally with all these things, obviously. And you know me. You know that it's very hard for me, this language of the 12 steps, which is giving it to a power bigger than me. That I struggle with that language because of exactly what you're saying, Bert. And I think this commentator, anyway, I could be misreading it, but my understanding of what he's saying is it's temporary. I'm not strong enough yet. I'm not able yet. But if I don't address it in some way, if it's too heavy, I'm just going to turn away from it and shove it down. And that's when it's going to come out all twisted. And that's not going to be good for me or anybody else. So help me hold it. Help me carry it so that I can start to deal with it until I can carry it, is what I think I hear him saying. It isn't do it for me. It's if it's too heavy, I'm not going to lift it at all. I can't lift it. And so I'm just going to walk away from it. But if God is no Se'avon out of love and out of a desire to see us grow and develop, then God is the parent who says, get out of my face, go upstairs. I can't look at you right now. Right? Like just kind of the containment rather than saying what we want to say in that moment. You ungrateful little bratty piece of, which she was being, right? It was not untrue, but like, is that helpful for me to say? Right. Anyway, you get it. I don't want to. Lisa Rosenbaum was laughing. And why?
Because we're parents.
Because we're parents. You snotty little bratty little, that donor, I'm telling you. Okay.
I have a question, just a quick one. You mentioned something about work that's being done about shame, and I'm just wondering what that's all about.
It's amazing work. Brene Brown, Brene. Her work that she published, her thesis, her PhD thesis, she published as a book called Dancing at the Shame Prom.
I know them.
Yes.
I know those guys.
So she's the one working with shame as being debilitating, and that the courage to be vulnerable enough to deal with our shame and begin to heal our relationship to shame is the way that we grow, and that it takes extraordinary strength and courage to be vulnerable enough to deal with shame.
She did a TED Talk also about shame that was fabulous.
Yes, you can watch her TED Talk on shame. It's a much shorter version of it's the chiddush, right? It's as we say in Hebrew, it's the chiddush. It's the kernel, the ikar. The essence of her teaching is in the TED Talk. It's brilliant. And it's not stuff that we don't sort of intuitively get, but she's the first one to really articulate the incredible courage it takes to be vulnerable, and that it's vulnerability that we tend to think of as shameful that actually leads to us being strong, healthy, functional adults.
Okay, you just may have changed my mind about doing a writing project.
Okay. Can't wait to hear.
Gotta look into this.
Yeah, watch her TED Talk.
I actually have that book in my disgustingly sooty room at home, so it's not coming out. But,
right. Yeah. Well, look online for her stuff.
I will. Thank you.
It's really good. Okay. Rabbi James Bennett says, and obviously these are longer articles. I'm hacking out just the ikar, the chiddush from a lot of them for you, but here's the link. I'm trying to give y'all now the link to these articles. When we do make sure that every person is counted and that every person counts, then we carry one another. Oh, look how beautiful he's using these interpretations of the verb. When we make sure we naso, count everyone, that everyone is naso, everyone is counted, then we nase each other. Then we carry one another. We lift others who need our help up, right, to lift up by aspiring to the highest level of our values. And we in turn are lifted. And all of us are blessed by yet one more lifting up. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May the countenance of Adonai shine upon you and send grace upon you. And may the countenance of Adonai be lifted up before you and give you. When we make sure everybody counts, we lift one another and we lift ourselves towards our higher values. And then we earn, he's suggesting, the blessing of God's face being lifted towards us. Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. All right. Ann Ebersman says the Levite's job is to carry all of the appurtenances of the tabernacle through the desert. And yet here's this word, naso, raised them up. So going back to what Rachel was saying, that felt intuitive for her, they are weighted down, they are raised up. What lesson is intended by connecting these opposites? Perhaps in the end, it is the things that weigh us down that actually raise us up most profoundly. As we travel through the wilderness of our lives, God beckons us to discover our special burdens intended for our shoulders only, right? The Gershonites, the Kehatites, they each have burdens that are assigned to them that only they can carry, which are also our most precious gifts, right? The things that they are laden down with are the most precious parts of the Mishkan. It is not that God seeks to burden us. God knows and waits patiently for us to learn that when we discover what is meant for our shoulders only, the act of carrying will become a way of being raised. So let me read that again. God knows and waits patiently for us to learn that when we discover what is meant for our shoulders only, the act of carrying will become a way of being raised. So rather than think, I guess, of our own unique and specific challenges and burdens in life, this reading is saying, yes, that's true. And when you figure out what is yours alone to carry, only you can carry it, only you can do it. It's meant for you, only because of your situation, because of your autobiography, because of your unique mix of challenges and gifts. When you figure that out, it can be a way for us to be raised up.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday Morning Torah Study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.